Hello and welcome to ESPN FC. I'm Ed Dove. I'm here with Leonard Solms, and we are at the business end of the Africa Cup of Nations. It's the semi-final stage, and we have got two mouth-watering ties ahead of us. With Leonard, we're going to look through Nigeria against Africa, and then we're going to look also to the hosts, Ivory Coast against the Democratic Republic of Congo. Leonard, let's start with Bafana Bafana against the Super Eagles. Bit of rivalry between these two sides. Why don't you explain a little bit how South Africans feel about this rivalry and, of course, this fixture?
I think South Africa feels that South Africa and Nigeria are the two of the economic superpowers in Africa. We feel we have a lot of similarities, and that makes the rivalry even stronger. I think South Africa feels that Nigeria have had the better of us in sport, in music, in many aspects, but we feel that we're riding a bit of a wave at the moment, and South Africa feels an upset could be on the cards here because of this.
Analogy I heard a dear friend recount to me was that Nigeria are the bigger brothers, South Africa are the little brothers. And the bigger brothers always tend to win. They get the wedgies in, they get the nuggies in. But every now and again, the little brother get that little dig, that little cheap shot. Do you think do you think Wednesday's semi-final could be one of those days where the little brother emerges victorious?
I think that as much as the feeling in the country is that if ever there were to be a time for it, it would be now. Nigeria are still the team with the better history, still the better team on paper. South Africa living a little bit of a charmed life at the moment, but showing remarkable grit and resilience that's been lacking in recent Africa Cup of Nations tournaments. But I think I'm still leaning towards a Nigeria win.
Spoke to Hugo Bruce after the quarter-final penalty shootout victory over Cape Verde, and he said that when South Africa departed for the Nations Cup, there was zero belief back home that they could reach the final, they could go on and win the cup. He said that already getting to the semi-finals was a fantastic achievement for Bafana Bafana, but that now people were starting to believe that maybe this could be a repeat of 1996. Could you talk a little bit about the public feeling ahead of this one, and maybe how it's changed since before the tournament, since when South Africa left home shore?
I think, to be fair, South Africa over the last couple of years have been steadily improving under Hugo Bruce, but I think it took a long time for the country to really buy in. Maybe you could attribute a small part of that to Bruce being confrontational with some of his statements. Some of his comments about South African football maybe rubbed fans of the PSL the wrong way, but I think that there's also just been a feeling that we've had optimism within South Africa so many times, and whenever things seem to be going right, then they go wrong, and so that was, I think, a bigger part of the reason why heading into the Africa Cup of Nations, even despite some clear progress under Hugo Bruce, there wasn't a lot of optimism. After the defeat to Mali, everyone felt that Bafana Bafana was just going to be a laughing stock once again, and off the back of not even qualifying for the last Africa Cup of Nations, like this time, there'd been progress in the sense that qualification had been achieved, and it was only going to result in even more embarrassment. But slowly but surely, the tide started to turn, and I think definitely the win over Morocco was what convinced most of the country that actually this team is the real deal. Me personally, as I alluded to earlier, I actually was more impressed by the win over Cape Verde, because the win over Morocco was a fantastic performance, but Bafana Bafana have always pulled up and come through with upsets against the big guns at certain occasions. But to show that grit when you're not playing well, I think that's the mark of true champions, and that's what's been missing in previous Bafana Bafana sides. If you recall 2019, South Africa beat Egypt in the round of 16, only to go on to lose to Nigeria in the quarterfinals in a game that needed that grit. But Nigeria just had more than South Africa on that occasion. This time, it's not going to be quite as easy for the Super Eagles.
Hugo Broos back in 2017 obviously guided Cameroon to the title. They drew with Senegal 0-0 in the quarter-final before then defeating them on penalties, the same as South Africa did against Cape Verde, with what was an outstanding display by Ronwen Williams between the sticks, saving 4 of the penalties. The best goalkeeping performance I've seen at this tournament, the best showing. Obviously, in normal time, he made a big save, and then obviously followed that up with a shootout. How important has he and also this Sundowns defence been to Bafana Bafana's performance in the tournament so far?
It's really difficult. It's difficult to state just how important the leadership from the back has been. The whole defense, as you mentioned, but particularly Ronwen Williams, probably hasn't gotten the credit he's deserved. I think there are a lot of fantastic goalkeepers in South Africa. There always have been. South Africa have struggled over the last few years, and yet even at South Africa's lowest point, they've always been fantastic goalkeepers competing for the Bafana Bafana spot. But Ronwen Williams, I think he's someone who probably is good enough to have even played at a relatively high level overseas by now, if things had worked out his way. But he's a player who he's had a good development at SuperSport United. He's playing for a fantastic team, Mamelodi Sundowns. I think the chemistry in that team has played a big role in South Africa developing that within the national team, where it's been lacking in the past. Ronwen Williams is an exceptional leader. Certainly, you can see by the way that when he's praised, he delegates the praise to others. That he's equipped not only to be a great goalkeeper, but to be a great leader. And I think that although he probably hasn't received quite as much credit as he's deserved up to this point in his career, he's probably paving the way for a generation that will follow him.
The Super Eagles, I just think the quality they have across the park, the security of their defensive unit as well. They've got the best defensive record in this campaign. Stanley Nwabali, who also plays in the PSL, has emerged as their number 1 goalkeeper and is doing a fantastic job so far. I want to hear your opinions of him. Has he been what was his profile in PSL heading into this tournament? Was he someone who you're kind of surprised has been able to step up and be the Super Eagles number 1?
I would say, to be honest, yes, I'm surprised, but I'm not shocked, because it is something that we've seen before. I think that the level of goalkeeping, not just from South African goalkeepers, but from all goalkeepers in the PSL, is quite high, and it's a similar path really to Daniel Akpeyi. Daniel Akpeyi at Chippa United did exceptionally well, and that elevated his profile. So yeah, once again, although maybe I wasn't quite expecting it to happen also quickly, it is something that it's not unprecedented.
Obviously, now Ronwen Williams and that Sundowns backline will have to come up against Victor Osimhen, the reigning African Footballer of the Year, which would be a completely new challenge for them. But also they're going to have to come up against Ademola Lookman, who's really impressed me with his penetration, his ability to score goals, make the difference, but also his creativity, his movement. It's going to be a whole new test for that defense. Just quickly from you, how do you think they're going to hold up against the Super Eagles strike force?
Personally, I feel it's going to be a low scoring game. I think it's not due to any lack of ability from Osimhen's side to come and produce in these moments, but just because there's an existing rivalry and the atmosphere is probably going to be so tense. I think if he shows up even in one big moment, that could be enough to decide the game.
And finally, of course, the other semi-final, Ivory Coast against the Democratic Republic of Congo. speaking with Colin ahead of the quarterfinals, I made the case that the Ivory Coast's campaign at this tournament has been one of the most remarkable single campaigns by any team I've seen in any international competition. Going from the desolation, the despair of losing 4-0 at home to Equatorial Guinea, ranked 88th in the world, sacking your keeper, introducing Emos Faye, who'd never before held a managerial post, then going to the delirium of eliminating the holders, Senegal, silencing Sadio Mane, progressing to the quarterfinals, and then in the quarterfinal against Mali, it was an even more remarkable story. When they were with 10 men since the end of the first half. They still managed to equalise during regular play. Then they saw out extra time. Then they even scored in the 120th minute. As maybe a neutral fan, how have you experienced the Ivory Coast's run to the semi-finals and just this absolute roller coaster of a campaign?
It's one of those where I feel it's similar to South Africa in a sense, in that it feels like they're living a charmed life. But even though on paper they've been the more successful side over the last probably 2 decades, it feels like it's been even more shocking that Cote d'Ivoire, given the obstacles in their way, have managed to come quite this far. And I think now that they've got this momentum behind them, it's going to be very, very difficult to stop them. I personally feel that the only team that's going to be able to stop it is Nigeria.
I'm a bit more optimistic about the Democratic Republic of Congo's chances. As I also said with Colin before, I love the variety they've got in their attacking department. We saw that against Guinea. The way that guys like Bakambu, Meshak Ilia, Yohan Wissa can hurt players, both can hurt teams. Both Wissa and Meshak have got a few goals in this tournament. Also, Gael Kakuta being able to pull the strings just behind that forward line. They also have momentum. They also have great unity. They saw off a pretty tricky Guinea side without too much difficulty in the end, winning 3-1 in that quarterfinal. And I think it's going to be a very tough one to call. I'm not willing to give a prediction after some of my slightly haywire predictions earlier in the tournament, but I'm concerned that this is maybe where the elephant's run in the tournament comes to an end.
Well, I can see how you could arrive at that conclusion, and definitely some of the players you mentioned there, Elia, Bakambu, Kakuta, these are players that much as have been promised. They've had the talent for a long time, and it's fantastic to see that now they're leading this DR Congo campaign that may just see them go all the way. At this point, there's nobody who you could say has absolutely no chance, especially in this Africa Cup of Nations of all of them. I think they've done their country proud. Personally, for me, I predict, and I don't have the baggage of predictions that people have actually seen that have gone haywire. But I feel personally it's going to be a Nigeria versus Cote d'Ivoire final.
And with who to emerge victorious. Let's hear your, put it now down on paper on the stream. Who's your tip to go all the way and win into that final?
I honestly believe it's going to be my big brother, the Super Eagles. Yeah, I suppose at the very least, that's going to shield me a little bit if I go wrong from the same backlash that you receive. But I really genuinely do believe that this is their tournament.
I think I would be foolish to put my backing behind anyone other than the Super Eagles at this stage, for my own safety as much as anything else. So I'm going to go for the Super Eagles, not just to beat South Africa, but also to win the final. Against whom, too difficult to say. If I had to be forced, I'll go for that emotional roller coaster of Ivory Coast to go one match further. I don't know how they're going to pull out the bag, but Nigeria to defeat Ivory Coast in the final. Either way, after the drama, after the excitement we've seen, I'm sure it's going to be a fascinating final few days to this tournament. And Leonard, I hope you enjoy it as much as everyone else.